Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. It is a day. It is a day. I'm taping this in, is it August or September? I think it's August. And I'm just going to tell you all, please look for the Predictions podcast at the end of the year, because that is when I'll also tell you what I'm doing with the podcast and the Patreon, which they might be saying the same. They might be changing. I'm taking a break right now to see what I want to do. But today, Camille Elizabeth is here, and I'm very excited to talk to you. Camille is from highlyspiritualperson.com. How are you today?
I am so good. I am so excited to talk to you today. This is like a dream come true. This is great.
You've already had a flash of, let's just say, my life. So I'm going to encapsulate this really. The apartment I was living in just had its third bat in 2 weeks, and the ceiling is cracking. And they were like, oh, no, ceilings do that. And I'm like, daily it cracks? So after the third bat, right? It's only me and only in Utica. And after the third bat, I just called the landlady and I was like, I'm moving downstairs. So I moved myself downstairs all alone in the middle of the night. So I'm a little punchy, could be the word. So so expect a few errors, and that's how it is. But my friend, I have so many questions for you, and I'm going to start with your journey into the metaphysical, paranormal. How did you get started?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I guess, I could start the day I was born, but I'll fast forward a little bit past that, so we're not here for a couple days. So I would say my very beginnings was probably as a child. I grew up in kind of a traditional, not super traditional, but kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out Christian home. We didn't go to church a lot, but that was kind of, we were like cultural Christians. But I always had a lot of questions. I didn't really love the answers that I was getting. And I kind of felt like I wasn't from here. I had this kind of weird inkling. I'm just like, this is weird. I had this feeling like, why was I born here and in this body and at this time? Couldn't I have been born somewhere else, or, in a different body? Like, I had these very kind of big questions. And I remember I would like look at myself in the mirror and be like, I'm inside of this body. That's really bizarre. That's really weird. So it started with those kind of little questions. And then, when I was a little bit older, I started exploring other religions. When I was in high school, I took a comparative religion class and I was like, this is kind of cool. And I started meditating. I started studying Buddhism. And then I think the big break in my life was when I went away to college at 18, and I went to a Catholic university, and I was surrounded by all of these people who really believed in Catholicism. And I wasn't used to being around people that really believed in anything. I was like still very wishy-washy about everything. And they were so convinced that, the Bible was true and the Catholic Church was true. And it made me think like, okay, well, what do I believe? And another fast forward, the next, I would say, 10 years of my life, maybe longer, I spent kind of bouncing around every major religion in the world. I ended up reading the Bible cover to cover twice.
Wow.
Yes, that took, this happened in college. That part particularly happened in college. So you can imagine how cool I was. Everybody else is going to parties and doing keg stands. And I'm, like a monk in my room by myself, just reading the Bible in, dim light by myself. So like I was very popular.
Yeah.
Just absorbing everything. And then, so that, I did the whole thing of exploring traditional religions. I almost went to seminary, which that was kind of a whole thing. I was like, wanted to be like a progressive Christian minister, but that never happened. And then the next big break, and we could, talk about this further, was when I discovered Reiki in like 2015. That in itself is kind of a big story, but I feel like I said a lot, so I'll stop right there.
No, you're doing great. Not only are you doing great, you really move at my pace. Like
Yeah.
Right? I like to squeeze in a lot.
Yeah.
So reading the Bible, have recently become a little bit obsessed with Mary Magdalene. And in fact, there's a
Yeah.
lady, I don't know if I can get her on the podcast, but she, if the podcast's still here, she wrote a book called The Other Goddess, and it's all about female
Yeah.
sexuality. But when you were reading, like you're at this Catholic school, you're reading the Bible, don't you feel like it still grips me that like the Book of Ruth wasn't in there, or Mary, there's the series The Chosen is supposed to be very good, but they open up right away with Mary Magdalene as a prostitute, and I was like, I can't stand that. Like, did that come later, or when you were reading, were you like, where are all the women?
Yeah, it's funny so if you're somebody who grew up in the church, or any religion, you'll know that there is the version of the religion that's given to you, right? That what is taught every week, right? There's 52 weeks in a year, and they generally do a couple verses, a passage, and it's through the lens of the religion that you're in. It's through the lens of the pastor that you're talking to. There's only so much you can get through in a year. And it has an agenda according to that religious body, what they want to teach you, right? If you read the Bible, like in full, you will find so many tidbits and so many things that are never even covered in church, never even attempted to be covered in church, because there's so much depth and complexity, and it's not as straightforward that as most religions would like us to believe. Right. It's just not. There's a lot of complexity. And your question about, okay, where are all the women? There are a ton of women in the Bible, and a ton of powerful women in the Bible. And there are actually people who have written full theses and books that talk about just like the amazing stories of women in the Bible. But if you talk to some of the more traditional, quote unquote, whatever that means, traditional viewpoints in modern American Christianity, you would think that, oh, women are meek and they don't talk. But it's like, no, there are a lot of women in the Bible that are doing really badass stuff.
Yeah.
And even if you look at, you talked about Mary Magdalene and the discourse around her. I mean, to my knowledge, it's been a while since I've actually, read the Bible at this depth. I don't think that the Bible even says that Mary Magdalene is a prostitute. My interpretation is that's something that the church said to try to, kind of cast a light on her, that she shouldn't be trusted. I'm pretty sure what the verse is that she had like 7 spirits in her or something that needed to be cleansed or something, which, if you think about it, is that really different from anybody else that Jesus healed? Is that really any different than anybody else that needed healing? You're like, okay, why is she somehow more evil? And I think the problem is how much power she had.
Yes.
Even the way that she's talked about, right? She's talked about, it's like, okay, you had the 12 apostles and Mary Magdalene. That's a very powerful woman to be traveling with Jesus and the apostles. To me, she is an apostle, right? I mean, if she gets to essentially minister to people and travel with them, she's an apostle in my view. But I mean, again, I'm not a scholar. I'm just a girl from New Jersey. So.
No, but you know what? This is kind of where I love people's opinions on this, because I shouldn't quote this other lady, because some of it I think she was actually Jesus' number 1 apostle. Wasn't there sort of a little turf fight over that?
That's a good question. That I'm not super sure about. But, if you are familiar with the Nag Hammadi texts, like the Gnostic texts, you were talking about like some of the books that didn't make it into the Bible. There are some allusions in those texts that didn't make it into the Bible that they were either married or there was a more kind of close, intimate relationship between them. And of course, these books are considered by the Catholic Church and any other major body as, apocryphal, not true, completely antithetical to, what they've taught for thousands of years as the truth. But, if you think about it, who else, what other kind of relationship would somebody have where you're traveling with this person,
Mm-hmm.
from city to city? Like, that would have to be, even if it's not sexually intimate, that's emotionally intimate. And I think that scares people, the idea that, yes, Jesus is considered to be divine and also man, and it's like, yeah, he probably
Was still a
very, very
man.
deeply, and very deeply loved her. I think in probably a very pure and amazing way. But yeah, there might have been a sexual element to that. There might have been a romantic element to that. Even if there wasn't, Mary Magdalene is still incredibly powerful in that position, and that
Yeah.
scares people.
Yeah, I love that. I love everything you just said. There's this woman on TikTok that reads she was taught, she's Jewish, but she reads the Bible as direct from Arabic. Like,
Yes, yeah. So Aramaic, yeah.
yes. So, and it's very fascinating how different it is.
Yeah.
The whole thing. So that's pretty fascinating. But
Yeah, it's funny. I to that point, that was one of the things that really tripped me out, was when I was studying the Bible. I started studying biblical Greek and biblical Hebrew, and that in and of itself changed my opinion on a lot of stuff, like, the idea of hell. I mean, again, I know we only have an hour. I could go into how my opinion is that hell is made up, because the words that are all translated into the English word hell in the Bible. There's several words, several different words in the Bible. If you look at for instance, the Hebrew, the word Sheol, right? That really just means the grave. So if you see early, if you look in your Bible that you have in your nightstand or whatever, I know you read your Bible every day, Karen. I know you're very faithfully read it.
I'm trying to read. I got Tolstoy, The Gospel in Brief, and I'm trying to get through that. I'm such a slow reader, though. But right. I like that. Just Jesus' word. That's where I'm starting.
I love, yeah, exactly. You can always skip past. I think it's fine to skip past the early stuff. But my point being is, if you look at the word hell, that you see in the Old Testament, it's generally coming from the Hebrew word Sheol, which really means the grave. It's not a place of conscious torture. It's the place that everybody goes, the wicked, the just, everybody. It's just the grave. If you look at later parts where it says hell, there might have meant Gehenna. Gehenna is a Greek word. It's actually a place in the north of Jerusalem. What I'm saying is, again, I'm not a scholar, not a biblical scholar, but there's a lot of stuff that we were taught at face value, like this means this. Mm-hmm. But if you dig a little bit deeper and you learn history and you learn, like that woman on TikTok, you learn, biblical Greek, biblical Hebrew, Aramaic, you start to see that, like, we've kind of been lied to, either consciously by, whoever they is, or unconsciously by the pastor that, maybe means well. But not everything is exactly as it seems on the surface.
No. And, I really like this conversation because I do interact a lot. I feel like I interact a lot with Jesus. I shouldn't speak for him. Maybe he's not having such a good time. No, but like that's, I consider that one of my guides or one of my go-tos. And I do like that the Bible has a lot of good stuff in it. Like I'm kind of open to that. I feel like, and this is just you're exactly right. Like the best minister or could have a childhood trauma that makes them not like males or females. And so that comes into their message. And I feel like that's the part, I don't want to make this patriarchal or matriarchy thing, but I do feel like this patriarchy, which is also hurting men. So it's not just, especially in my readings now, the men that are coming to the conclusion that what we were told they were supposed to be strong and provide still. But I feel like, I'm anti big establishment. So that's who I feel. Sure. It's like the prescription companies decided if they decide they're going to fix the Bible, what would that look like? We're going to do an interpretation of the Bible here at Pfizer. So what's going to be? That was a weird leap. That's what happens when you have bats in your apartment. Well, first of all, I love how we just leaped off there. That was fantastic. And I'm going to take a second leap because when I was on your website, this is a word that I have heard, and I probably should know what it is, but the word is neurodivergent. And so I saw that and I said, you know what, I'm going to ask her to explain that. And this is the funniest thing. So as I said that, I guess all my computers were listening. And there was a cartoon on TikTok, and it was like, I don't know why, it was SpongeBob or a piece of toast. And the caption was, me, my neurodivergent self, talking to myself in my apartment. And the thing just, it's quiet for a minute, and then the thing goes, yeah, no, that's not right. And I was like, I do that all the time. Tell us what that means.
Yeah. So I guess to before I dig into exactly what neurodivergent means. So you mentioned my website is highlyspiritualperson.com. So this started as kind of a way to be a community or kind of a safe space for people who feel like they don't fit into a spiritual mainstream, maybe people who are leaving a traditional religion or maybe have some affinity for some of that, but really want to kind of create their own thing. And I noticed over the years, figuring out my own neurodivergence, and I'll explain what that means in a second, and noticing how all of my friends are neurodivergent as well, and we all tend to have this kind of like different viewpoints on spirituality. I was like, I think something's there. I think there's some overlap in people who are kind of think like this and people who have these spiritual views. So what neurodivergent means, and this is my understanding, not as a, I'm not a healthcare provider, I'm not a, professional. Like I said, I'm just a girl from New Jersey. So being neurodivergent essentially means that a person's brain works differently than what's considered typical or average, right? So this could be some kind of neurological difference, some kind of cognitive difference. This could be ADHD, which is what I have. It could be autism. It could be dyslexia. I've also heard other people put Tourette's in there, bipolar. I've heard people say even those with like traumatic brain injuries fit into this. So like, I think the umbrella of what's considered neurodivergent could be pretty wide, but most of the time when you hear that word, usually people are talking about ADHD, autism, or dyslexia. That's generally what people are talking about. And then you'll also hear the term neurodiversity, and that's really about like recognizing and kind of appreciating and valuing that we all have different kind of brain functions and ways of thinking and ways that our brain operates. So this includes appreciating neurodivergent people, but also appreciating neurotypical people and kind of finding a way for all of us to kind of get along as one big happy family, I guess.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. In fact, hold on one second, folks. I'm going to take a break and we're going to come right back and we're going to pick this up exactly where we left it off. MedicallySpeaking.com is a prophetic shop that focuses on your inner alchemical transmutation. And I needed an alchemical transmutation to say alchemical transmutation. See, Toria, you did it. When you're looking for activations to change your aura, wisdom and insight to heal your past, and alchemy to live your highest vibrancy, you will most certainly enjoy the array of offerings you will find at hermeticcallyspeaking.com. Created through the teaching of the Hermetics, Toria, who's been on my podcast many times, provides personalized guidance that caters a feast specifically from the higher realms to you. You'll leave each session feeling empowered and loved, having gained ancient knowledge for your soul's nourishment and growth. Believe me, I know. I've worked with Toria and she is terrific. Everything you need is within you. So come remember, activate, and expand your knowing at hermeticallyspeaking.com. It's interesting. And I wonder, because as you were describing that, I think I could go down that list. I don't want to diagnose myself. I'm going to tell you, it's really interesting. Because the other day for the first time, I thought I had these looping thoughts. I have them all the time. I can't break them when I get in a cycle. And I saw, it came into my mind, it said, you have OCD. And I was like, maybe I do. And literally being aware of that almost immediately stopped the looping thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
not as a cure, I'm saying, but I think once I saw it, it went away. So maybe I have to say, I don't think I've had those looping thoughts. You know how you get something in your head and you're obsessed,
Yeah.
and then that person's going to say something terrible, and I'm going to have to move.
It's like ruminating.
Yes.
Yeah, ruminating. And it's funny with labels, right? Because you mentioned OCD, and there's some people who consider OCD as part of the neurodivergent umbrella. The reason why I've been kind of wishy-washy about like, this could be in it and this could not be is because I feel like labels can sometimes be empowering, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they can also sometimes be limiting. So
yeah.
right. So I never tell another person, like, you need to identify as this, you need to identify as that, whether it's mental health related or spiritual, because I think a lot of us have that baggage, whether it comes from a spiritual or religious community trying to label us as you need to be this or that, or if it's, a medical diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis saying you have this or that. I would rather people pick the labels that work for them, whether they self-diagnose as or not, whether they pick a certain spiritual label or not, and see how that feels, see if that works for them, see if that helps on their journey. And if it doesn't help anymore at some point, just let it go, or if you need it to help you, compartmentalize or help you understand what's going on in your reality, go for it. But like, if anybody listening has followed any of my, inconsistently posted social media accounts, I change my labels constantly, especially spiritually. I mean, I have changed what I thought I was most of the time. So, right now I might say, if you had to ask me, I'd say, oh, I'm a pantheist, right? I believe everything is God. But, in a year from now, I might have a different label. Same thing with, neurodivergence. I believe I have ADHD. I have all of the symptoms of inattentive ADHD. And maybe a year from now, I'll be like, oh, you know what? It was actually something different. So, if you have OCD, if you don't, I think it's more about how are you dealing with the symptoms that appear.
Right. It really helped me to say that. Maybe I don't, but I think saying it really helped. And
Yeah.
and just a weird I don't think there's going to be any way to get away from people being ADHD, which Jessa Reed always tells me I am, because of the computers.
Yeah.
And
I think that, and also I think people need to recognize that these diagnoses exist within the context of the cultures that we're in, without getting down into like a huge rabbit hole, which I know I absolutely can right now. And I'm going to try to avoid going down this rabbit hole. There are people who really don't believe ADHD exists because uh, children and people are diagnosed with it at a far higher rate in the United States and other places around the world. And I get what they're getting at. And my view is that ADHD does exist, but if you're in a society or a culture that is easier for you to live with those symptoms, then there would be no reason for you to ever think of the way that your brain works as a deficit.
Okay.
Right?
So
like if you, yeah.
So if we are a computer generation, then the ADHD doesn't matter.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like if so there was a study about I think ADHD in the Amish community. And apparently, there are children in the Amish community that have what we call ADHD. And what happens with those kids is, they can't really sit still in school and whatnot. But apparently the Amish are like, okay, you can go out and hunt with the adults. You can go out and fish. You can go out and do these things. So they just kind of treat it in a different way, from my understanding. So, I mean, if we are living in a society where we need to constantly be on the computer and we need to be switching tasks a lot, somebody with ADHD might have more trouble with that than someone in another community that's allowed to kind of flow with how their brain needs to work.
I love that. A while ago, I got an email from a lawyer, and if you're still out there, I'd love to hear from you again. And she was defending the Native American community. I thought she was up in Michigan or something. I could be wrong, but the top of the United States somewhere, where they wanted to treat their people that had schizophrenia because they treat it in a way, I can't remember, but it was almost like teaching that person to be pulled back into reality. And I have a friend who emailed me. I gotta talk to him again. He has a great, I want to say his Instagram too. I'll find it later. I'll give it to you. He's an artist, and he talks about how his mother was like, didn't let him get labeled with it, and how what it was like. But I do think, and this is just my, I think everything's too big, and I think once it gets easy for, this is nothing. I'm going to get it. I was just going to say, everybody wants to just hand someone a pill and go, this will fix that. And that I think is where it gets wrong. But if it is, if there's other ways, exactly like you were saying, I would love to see that. I'd love to go back to a naturopathic way. I'd love to, this sounds strange, but I'd love for vocational programs to come back to school so kids could do those jobs. I'm way off. This is what happens when there's bats in your brain. Okay. So another quick turn. Tell me.
Yeah.
I think we hit that good. Tell me about your Reiki transformation, shall we call it?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So this was another, as I was saying at the top, this was another kind of major point in my life where I think my awakening, ascension, whatever word you want to, use, kind of opened up a little bit more. So this was around 2015. I was already kind of open to different kinds of spirituality, but I didn't know a ton. And personally in my life at this point, I was going through this year where I was like, I need to say yes to more things. I need to stop saying no to things. I was doing like that year of yes thing, eat, pray, love, bullshit, whatever. I was like, let me do something, different. So I started literally just showing up at random events that I found online. Like I would just find a random thing, and it was cool, right? I did like cooking classes, and I did, hikes and stuff. And I saw this thing that said free Reiki share. And for some reason, I did not research what the hell that was. That's so unlike me. I normally need to know exactly like what I'm walking into. It was literally held in the back of a chiropractor's office at like 8 p.m., like extremely shady. But I was like, whatever, I'm saying yes to stuff. It's free. So I show up, and there's they push the chiropractic tables out of the way. And, they sit down and they're like, okay, what's everybody's Reiki level? And people are going around like, I'm a Reiki master, I'm a Reiki too. And they get to me and I was like, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I really have no idea what this is. Like, I'm just here. And they were like, wow, that's so like amazing. And I was like, okay, sure. And they started explaining to me what Reiki is. And I was internally extremely dismissive of this. I was like, oh, these hippies are waving their hands over okay, whatever. but I didn't leave, right? I stay there. And they knew that I was the least knowledgeable in this. So they're like, would you like to receive Reiki? Would you like to see what this is? And I'm like, all right, sure, you hippies, whatever. So I get on the table, and I have 4 Reiki masters around me, one at my head, one at my feet, one on either side. And they're like, okay, just close your eyes and relax. And the moment they put their hands on me, it felt like electricity was going through my entire body. The woman that was at my head put her hands kind of like gently over my eyes, and I saw like lightning bolts and like sparkles, and it just felt like just electric. Like I could feel it moving like these waves all up and down my body. It was like I'd never felt anything like this before. And I can't tell you how long I was on that chiropractor's bench. I don't know. It could have been 2 minutes. It could have been an hour. But at the end, they step away, and I hear like 2 of them kind of like whispering in hushed tones in the distance. Like I was kind of concerned. I'm like, oh God, did I break something? Like, did I break their Reiki or something? Yeah, I'm like, did I break their Reiki? And the one of the women who was like the most crone like, she was like the master of all masters, came over and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I try to sit up, but I'm like really wobbly, and she's like, slowly get up. And I sit up and I just start sobbing. Like I've never cried before. I was like, I feel seen, I feel loved. Oh my God, like just crying. And they like bring me over to this chair, and they're like handing me crystals, and they're like, drink water, and I'm like, what did you guys do to me? What's happening? And like I was like inconsolable, right? So I eventually leave, and I had to drive home. I was like 30 minutes home, and I'm literally driving home sobbing the whole time, going, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck just happened, what the fuck, the whole ride, 30 minutes in the dark home, right? And I get home, and for the next 3 days my body felt like I had run a marathon. Like every muscle, I could feel every muscle in my body. It felt like I was like purging and releasing. I drank probably 6 gallons of water. Like I needed to drink so much water. And they checked on me. They were very nice. They kept, texting me like, "Are you okay? Just want to make sure you're okay." And I really feel like, looking back on it now, I must have had so many blockages, so much that needed to be released. And I truly feel it was kind of divinely orchestrated that I showed up to that Reiki share. And then eventually, years later, I ended up going through the Reiki training myself, and I'm now a Reiki master. I have not done anything. I have not had that effect on any person yet. It's usually much more gentle than that. But yeah, that's how I got my shit rocked at a Reiki share in a chiropractor's office.
Sometimes it's just like a click away. Like my friend Sallow that was on, they put some crystals on her. She was the same. She was a chiropractor, and then that's when she turned into a walk-in. She was like, I have a different name and everything. So sometimes it's just, and I do believe that's divinely orchestrated. Like, did they ever say like why they were worried about you? Were you crying, or did you levitate, or what happened that they were like, holy cow?
I did not levitate. But this is again another long rabbit hole that I could get down. So
this is fascinating. So feel free with this rabbit hole.
So what I didn't know at the time was that group was actually a spiritualist church that met in that chiropractor's office. I, again, like for some reason, didn't really read very closely like what I was walking into. So most of the people in that room were actually also mediums. And I think number one, just on a human level, they were just concerned that they made me cry, right? Like, no, I don't think anybody has ever wept at their free Reiki share before. So I think they were just kind of like, let's make sure that this person is okay, that like if she's going through something, that she has us as a resource. I ended up going back there on and off for like 5 or 6 years, and I started training as a medium, believe it or not. That ended up being a small part of my journey. I started channeling, but this could be a whole other podcast, but I ended up leaving that church when the main person who ran it started doing some stuff that I found really dark and weird and unethical. So I ended up not becoming a medium, and I kind of ended up leaving. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll still become a medium one day and finish my training in that. But,
yes.
I mean, that's a whole other story. The dead kind of freak me out. I'm fine with like channeling my guides and angels, but like I don't want to talk to anybody's grandpa. Like I don't know that I don't know if I want to do that. I'll talk to Metatron though. I'll talk to Archangel Michael. I'll talk to the angels. But like if you're somebody's peepaw that's like sitting in the corner, I don't know if I want that. So
well, it's real interesting. Yeah, that is. I just did the greatest. With Dana, I'm going to say it again, Dana well, I always want to say why Dana Willie and her partner Matt, I did a training with them that was phenomenal. But it is interesting. I always looked for a spiritualist church and I could never find them, but it is a funny, because I always say I dance, I don't do dark stuff, but I'm okay with the dark side. But it is, I wonder what that intrigue is when it leads somebody, you know what I mean? Like maybe it's just curiosity, but yeah. That's a strange, sometimes when things get dark, you wonder, I had an interesting conversation with Elaine, which I think is on 2 episodes before this, about how there's a thing about a trickster spirit. Like when we just get it right, it almost turns into a trickster spirit. And I wonder if that really is kind of the universe. Like you don't get to just figure it out and sit there and have all the knowledge. Then they change it on you.
Yeah, I mean, I can say just with my whole spiritual journey has been like that I've gotten to points where I'm like, man, I've finally figured it out, the secrets of the universe. And then something happens and I'm like, oh, wow, I don't know anything. And I try to stay humble as much as I can and just kind of ask the questions and see what feels true at the time. Because I mean, there were things that I believed 10 years ago that I'm like, oh no, that's not it. Or when I was in the spiritualist church and I thought that was my path. And now I'm looking back and I'm like, yeah, I needed that. But I didn't need to kind of continue with them. I needed to kind of go this way. So yeah, I try not to say this one viewpoint, this one path is the path. I think they can all lead home, whatever you consider home to be. And I think they're all meant to teach us something. And, me personally, I think we come back here thousands of times, millions of times maybe. And I think that, yeah, maybe you have some lifetimes where you need to be a Catholic. Maybe you have some lifetimes where you need to be a Buddhist. Maybe you have some lifetimes where you need to be an atheist. And they all teach you something, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
I totally agree. The abuse comes back as the abuser or vice versa. I think that's the finishing off of the spirit, is getting that you've done it all. I've done it all. And you're absolutely right. And I love people with confidence, but you have to watch out for anybody, especially in this spiritual business, that has that I want to say not really just knows it all, but is way too sure. Like this is it.
Yeah, I've run into more than one of those over the years. Yeah.
Yes. And that is where it scares me. But it is, like I said, I had that fantastic life in LA and now I'm in Utica. And I will tell you the one thing, and then we're going to take a break and come back and talk about your books. I really feel like here in Utica, it's like I've never had such an intense elemental. I've literally been attacked by elementals. And I believe very much. I've always believed astrology and all that stuff, but what is it called? Cartology, where you're supposed to live? Like, when I'm done here, oh my God, I can't wait to go to a cartologist or something and find out where I'm supposed to be, because this has been like someone did a healing on me and said, these elementals jump on you and they're laughing at what a hard time you're having. And I was like, oh my God. All right, everybody, hold on 1 second. We will be right back. Hey, everybody, how's that spiritual awakening going? I know. Don't worry. Help is here. HighlySpiritualPerson.com is a haven for spiritual misfits and empaths navigating spirituality and mental health. My friend Camille has a plethora of resources on her site to help you on your spiritual journey, even if you're just starting out. It includes individual and collective Reiki sessions, personalized guided meditations, sleep affirmation tracks, and so much more. Camille has so much to offer. She's going to be on my podcast in December. I can't wait to talk to her. Her blog posts and podcast episodes explore spirituality and are great for folks carving out their own path. She has written 2 easy to follow guidebooks, one on breathwork and the newest book
book is called Manifestation is Easy, and it features 22 step-by-step manifestation techniques, as well as tips and advice on how to overcome the most common blocks and start changing your reality. Go to highlyspiritualperson.com. I promise you, you will get lost in how much information is in there. It's one of my favorite rabbit holes.
It's on. Oh my God, it's on. Okay. All right, everybody. I'm having, as we started to talk about elementals, my recording equipment just all over the place. So I'm pretty sure that we're starting part 3. We're hoping.
Yeah.
And so we got off into 2 topics here. So the first, you're from New Jersey. Now, if you ask me, the East Coast is just elemental heavy. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Like, it's funny. I've been told multiple times that the Fae want to work with me. And I'm pretty sure Fae are either connected to elementals or are elementals because, they interact with nature quite a bit. And I've never been brave enough to do it because anytime I hear, people talk about the Fae, it freaks me out because I'm like, I'm going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. And I'm going to, have this like blood feud with the Fae. And I don't want to do that.
Right. You're walking on eggshells, right? You know what I think?
That's what I feel like.
I feel a little bit like they can be like a wild animal that you can feed sometimes. And then you don't know when you cross that line, like you go to pet it on the head and then it bites you.
Exactly. And that's why I've been avoiding dealing with the Fae. I don't really practice, in that way anymore. When it comes to elementals, I've always kind of had this thing where I think you should respect the land that you're on as much as you can. And for me, that looks like gardening, kind of taking care of the environment around me, trying to make sure I'm not putting a lot of negative energy, but also not like pesticides or, improper things into the environment around you. And I think that does, to use the new age term, raise the vibration, in the area and make, the elementals happy. But I don't know if I've ever like directly, consciously interacted with elementals.
I never did until I think here. And I think, Utica is such a funny place because it is, all this East Coast, but they had, like, I think this upstate New York was in every war, like the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the just, it's a brutal area, the mob wars. And I just think there is a lot of negativity here. And and then I think the house I'm in has some real garbage, something floating around. And this is literally why I thought I had to move. There was something in that second floor apartment, and I pushed it up to the 3rd floor. And I remember because one day I had to reset the Wi-Fi router, and I walked into the 3rd floor. There was no one living there, and I just in my head, I heard something say, like, get out. You don't belong here. Like, it was almost like you pushed me here and then you come up here. And that night was, there's something that would kick the bed upstairs. It would kick like I'd have to wake up. And I think it was like drawing that boundary. Well, someone moved upstairs and they're from India and they're quite religious. And I wonder if then it pushed it back down to the 2nd floor, which then pushed me to the 1st. And I know that sounds crazy and complicated, but there's something in this house.
Yeah. Oh, no. I completely believe you. I mean, my first apartment that I had, the woman who lived in it before me died in the apartment, which I, for some reason, I guess I'm just a spooky person. I had no problem with that. All my friends thought I was insane. They're like, why are you going to live there? I'm like, I don't care. She can hang out and watch Netflix with me. I don't care. And legitimately, there were a couple times where, I would have all the lights off and I would see like a spirit kind of like walking back and forth. And I just kind of didn't really care because she wasn't like knocking anything, down or anything like that. I've had situations like that before. And the only other time that I had that was when I kind of accidentally brought it on myself by using a spirit box
Mm-hmm.
Box app. And I put it on my altar, which I think is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. Did not set any protection. I did not set one prayer of protection, nothing. I just was like, hey, if anybody wants to come in. And I heard footsteps in my house. Stuff was falling off the in the closet, like stuff was falling off the shelf. And that scared me. I ended up going to the Botanica the next day and getting like black salt and like saging my house and doing all these prayers and rituals. I was like, oops. So yeah, I mean, I think there are ways to protect against stuff like that, but if it's already there when you get there, I don't know how much you can do, because I feel like you're kind of you're the intruder in that in
Right.
that respect, right? Yeah.
Well, that is the hardest thing with apartments, because we can,
Yeah.
I work with Tommy to get stuff out, but when you have
Yeah.
something in an apartment, it goes to the next apartment until it's time to come back or until it
Yeah.
gets pushed somewhere else. So, and this, this is a weird way to say this, but I don't think everybody that owns this house is unhappy with something like this in it, which there's your other problem, but
Yeah.
I also, I have not, it's so funny because in the beginning I did feel like an elemental came into my bedroom and I said, you can't come in here, and it said, you feed the squirrels and I'll go away, and I haven't been feeding the squirrels, so maybe I should start feeding the squirrels again.
But here's the thing: you start feeding the squirrels, now you have to feed the squirrels forever. That's the only other thing, right?
Or
Like
until I
it's
leave.
like a right.
It's my friend Tommy says when I leave, he's worried that this house is going to be like Poltergeist in the end, where the house just collapses upon itself.
Oh no!
But but this house has to be almost 100 years old, and they are not keeping it up. So anyway, that's other stuff. But you have two wonderful books out, and I want to talk about the first one, which is about manifesting. Tell us about this book.
Yeah. So I just came out with this book. It's called Manifestation is Easy. And it has this longer subtitle, but essentially this book, I'll say this: I like writing guidebooks, like really easy to follow guidebooks, no fluff. Here's the information, because I found with my ADHD and my neurodivergence, that's how I learn very well that way. Like write things out step by step, tell me the basics, and not a lot else. So I decided to write this book, Manifestation is Easy, to help other people who are interested in what manifestation is, think that they want that as part of their spiritual path, but might be confused by a lot of the conflicting information, a lot of the kind of grander stuff that you see out there. This just kind of gets pretty straight into it. Like, here's what's worked for me. Here's the concept. Like, here's the framework. And now you go try it and see how it works for you.
Yeah, because you're right, because it can get too intense or it can get too airy fairy stuff. That's too airy fairy. That I found that with tarot books is because I still read tarot books all the time, but I feel like especially if someone starts, I don't know, I just love the way you had it set up, and it's 22 steps, right?
Yeah, so there's 22 different techniques.
Oh.
So the reason why I decided to go with, multiple techniques is I found personally there were certain things that worked for me in manifestation and certain things that didn't. So for instance, the 2-cup method that's very popular never worked for me. I do include it in the book because I know people that it works well for, but for some reason I can never make the 2-cup method work. But I have other methods like the congratulation method, imagine the event that follows. These are like Neville Goddard techniques. Those techniques have worked really well for me, so I decided to include those as well. Most of the techniques in the book, I would say, are 4 to 5 steps. There are a couple that are a little bit more involved and might have, 8 or 9 steps. But there's some they're very, very simple. And I hope that, people read this book, download it, and try out some techniques and kind of see what works for you. Because while I think manifestation, no matter what technique you use, we're all kind of doing the same thing. But, our brains get in the way, our personalities get in the way, and we have to find ways to kind of get past all of that in order to manifest.
You just tapped on something. So I'm my signs are Leo, and I don't know a lot about astrology. I know I'm Leo with Gemini rising and an Aries moon. And that's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
air and fire, which is why
Mm-hmm.
elementals, or what I perceive New York State, is a very earthy. It is
Mm-hmm.
a place, whereas California would be more of an air fire place. So that's a little better for
Mm-hmm.
me. So do you have a lot of one particular element in your
Mm.
because I haven't done the 2 cup method, but I do work with programming water, and I was like, water works for
Mm-hmm.
me, earth doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have
Mm-hmm.
a particular lot of one element in your astrology chart?
You know what? That's funny. I feel like I have a lot of earth because I'm a Taurus sun. I think it's earth and air for me. Yeah, I'm a Taurus sun, Aries rising, Gemini moon, and then I have a couple more Gemini kind of in my other planets, and then a lot of Capricorn in my outer planet. So yeah, it's a lot of earth and air. Like I tend to be kind of like grounded, mental. That's why I like stuff simple. Like just like break it down. Um, but it's funny you say with the programming water. Like I like being in water. I like programming my bath water. I like taking a lot of baths. I like emotions, that kind of stuff where I can feel things. But yeah, the 2 cup method, yeah, I don't know why, even though that's also a programming water thing, doesn't work. But methods where I'm visualizing, imagining, feeling, that stuff works for me a lot.
I'm going to try the 2 cup method one more time because it's been a long time since I did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. I would bet it has something to do with what's your favorite element. What's that could work out really well. Now, your other book is something I'm getting very interested in because I also believe, as much as like I can say, yeah, my life is pretty stressful, I feel like the way we're awakening, I'm going to use that word. And by the way, folks, that's what this website, Highly Spiritual Person, is all about, is helping you and aiding you and getting you and making this easier for you. I feel like as we're becoming more energetic, or I don't know, I'll use all the buzzwords, ascending or whatever, like we're getting more psychic, which means we're getting more empathic, which means we're being invaded more, which means more stress. And breath work is something I haven't really been in tune to, and I thought I got to see what that's about. That's what tell me a little bit about the breath work book.
Yeah. So breath work was something that I discovered. Ironically, also, like I was going through an extremely, extremely stressful time in my life. And I feel like in spirituality, there's been this tendency to kind of de-emphasize the body and try to kind of always exist in the upper chakras. Or we want to exist in the fifth dimension, right? We want to, we're connected to our higher selves, and we kind of forget about the body that we're walking around in every day. And there's almost like this shame and this like desire to detach from the body. But the body is what houses whatever you think we are, a soul, a spirit, whatever, your brain, it's what houses you. And you're going to be in it for as long as you're alive. So it's like, you might as well take good care of it and kind of learn how it works. So for me, breath work, was a way of, from a very scientific standpoint, of like releasing stress, healing, releasing anxiety, releasing depression, but also like connecting with my body, really appreciating my body, loving my body. And I think, even to connect it to the manifestation thing, I think breath work can also be a really good way to help you manifest, because manifestation, and I think any kind of spiritual work, is about kind of like dropping into your heart space, right? It's about listening to yourself, listening to your desires, listening to what you really want, who you are, which all, to me, that all exists in the heart. And in order to get into that heart space, you have to slow down, stop, relax, and not be so much in your head, and drop down into your center. And breath work helps you do that. And the reason why, in my breath work book, I include 30 different techniques because breath work can do a lot of different things for you. It can energize you. It can help you calm. It can help you get centered. And to me, that having that kind of control over your body and having that kind of control over your temperament and how you feel is incredibly empowering and incredibly just it makes you realize how powerful you are, that you actually have that level of control, that life isn't always happening to you. You can sit in the driver's seat and control some of what's going on in your life.
I love that, because that's exactly that, this is where all the learning comes in, or maybe why I have this podcast, because that's exactly how I feel out here, is like it's happening to me, or what is the next. And then you get into this, like, when is the other shoe going to drop, which is a horrible way to live.
Yeah, I've felt that, and that's how I felt for so long, that it was like I felt like a victim. And not saying that you feel like a victim, but I think
do. No, you're right. I have to unprogram that. I do have to unprogram.
Well, we all do. I mean, we were all taught that, right? We were all taught this kind of victimhood mentality. And here's the thing: sometimes things do happen to you. I'm not of the opinion that, like, oh, well, you asked for it. Like, we live in a universe and a society where other people make decisions that sometimes impact us, and then we have to figure out how to respond to them. So sometimes things do happen to you. I think the difference is you can acknowledge and say and feel your feelings and be like, oh my God, that sucked, that hurt, like that was wrong, I was wronged. But then, okay, how do I come back from this? How do I take the time to process this? How do I then get back in the driver's seat and not let this derail my entire life? How do I then kind of shift back into, okay, that happened to me, and now I get to decide how I react and how I heal. And it's easier said than done. I know I'm saying it like, oh yeah, just move on when this horrible thing happens. Like, no, it takes time, it takes work, and you're gonna dip back and forth into those feelings, but I think breath work and a lot of the spiritual work can at least give you a little bit of an edge and help you kind of not succumb to those feelings all the time.
Right. Not so drastic. That's what, like, I've been flying into this drastic place, which is, and there's a lot going on with my mom. It's hard to watch a parent deteriorate, so there's a lot, but also I always know there's another one after this one. So you might as well learn to handle it, right?
Yep. Exactly.
Awesome. So tell everybody, let's just highlyspiritualperson.com. That's your website. Give everybody an overview of what's there, what, when they go there, what they can look for, or how it can help out. Give us a big overview before we wrap up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you go to my website, highlyspiritualperson.com, so, one big part of it is the blog, where I kind of regularly write about just kind of different topics that are related to spirituality or mental health, or both. That's kind of my wheelhouse, is kind of discussing the intersection of all of those topics. I also have a podcast that I don't update as often, but I post that on the blog. So you can listen to podcast episodes where I go a little bit deeper into some of these spiritual concepts as well. I have a series where I talk about neurodivergence and mental health and discovering my neurodivergence. So if anybody's kind of going through that now, you'll find that on my site. And then as far as services, like I said, I have those 2 books that you can purchase on the site. But I also have this huge love of Reiki and guided meditations. Those are kind of my 2 other loves. So Reiki, I do individual Reiki sessions. I do regular Usui Reiki, Karuna Ki, and Arcturian Reiki. I kind of do a mix of those when I do Reiki sessions. And then I also have a membership where you can get kind of collective Reiki every week. And then I also have some free guided meditations on my YouTube site, which you can find through the website. And then I can also make custom guided meditations that are Reiki infused to help you with whatever you're going through. I can make sleep affirmation tracks that you can listen to help reprogram your subconscious at night. I like audio. I like audio a lot. So I can do a lot of fun things with that audio and writing. So, but yeah, I'm always updating it. So come hang out, follow me on Instagram at Highly Spiritual Person. Send me a note. Love to talk to people to kind of hear what they're going through. If there's kind of stuff they want me to talk about, it's always changing. So maybe when this comes out, I'll have even more stuff on there.
I believe that. It's so weird when you were talking. I don't usually get psychic hits, but I was like, yeah, the next time we talk, you're going to have a whole nother path on there.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, I don't even know if you remember, Karen, you doing a reading for me a while ago where you kind of predicted all of this. So,
oh, did I? Oh, good for me.
Yeah, this was a while ago. So, I mean, I feel like I manifested it, but I feel like you saw it. So,
oh, awesome. Well, that's good. That made my day. Yay.
Yeah.
All right, darling. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. And please, as soon as if the podcast continues, I'd love to have you on again. This has been delightful. Yes. And everybody check out highlyspiritualperson.com.
Okay. Thank you so much, Karen. Oh my God, that was so much fun.
Oh, good. Oh, and I'm still blogging out. I'm sorry I stopped there. It was awkward. That was my fault. Thanks to Micah, Uno Rising Media. We'll see you all next week. Thank you, Camille.
Paranormal Karen. She's a spooky kind of queen. Paranormal Karen. She's an angel without wings. Comedian, ghost hunter, conscious exploring. She's a funny gal and a real woo pal. She's Paranormal Karen.